Do you like jazz? You're listening to a real virtuoso, perhaps one of the greatest jazz pianists of all time, Keith Jarrett. Now, there's one thing you should know about Keith. Keith is a complete perfectionist. If you were ever to go into Keith Jarrett's bathroom, you would see every single bottle of shower gel and shampoo perfectly aligned with the label facing outwards and the gap between each bottle exactly the same. May not bother you, but these little details really matter to someone like Keith. Perhaps you know someone like this. Now, if you were to be fortunate enough to see a concert of Keith's, well, you better not cough during that recital. Otherwise, famously, he would stop playing the piano, turn and stare, or more likely glare at that person. I don't know what would happen if your mobile phone ringer would go off during a recital. Perhaps you would be taken outside and executed, something like that. So that's Keith. But actually, this story is not so much about Keith Jarrett. It's more about a girl called Vera. Vera is a 17-year-old and she lives in Cologne in Germany. We're in the late 1970s and Vera is a jazz lover. But unfortunately for her, she's never seen a jazz concert. She's never been to a jazz concert because there's never been a jazz concert in Cologne. They have this wonderful auditorium there, but it's only used for classical music and for opera. Of course, Vera would love for there to be a jazz concert. So she goes to the organizers of the auditorium and suggests that they put on a jazz concert. Now, there's one thing you should know about Vera. She doesn't take no for an answer. She's extremely determined and really quite persuasive. So she speaks to the management at the auditorium and they are not exactly excited by this idea, but they don't want to be the ones to say no to her. So rather than give her a flat out no, they suggest that she speaks to the municipal authorities, the town mayor, thinking that she would probably go away and that would be the end of the matter. Of course, she doesn't just go away, she actually goes and speaks to the local authorities and in fact even meets with the mayor. She suggests the same thing, let's have a jazz concert in the auditorium. The mayor, like all politicians, doesn't want to be the person to say no, so comes up with an idea and suggests that, okay, we will have a jazz concert, but only if you organize all of the acts in this performance, you take care of the whole thing. And of course the mayor believes that this will never happen, and this is a polite way of saying no. Vera leaves that meeting delighted. She's been given the go-ahead for the first jazz concert in Cologne. She even has a date. All she needs now is a performer. Vera's crazy about Keith Jarrett, and who wouldn't be as a jazz lover? He is the guru of jazz at the time. By an incredible stroke of luck, Keith is actually touring in nearby Switzerland and really won't be that far away on the date of this proposed concert. She writes to him, and to her incredible surprise, he agrees to play. But he places just one condition. Keith says he will only play on a specific type of piano, and that piano is a Bösendorfer 290 Imperial. Now, I don't know much about pianos. Maybe you don't either. All we need to know is that this is not an ordinary piano. In fact, just before doing this recording, I had a quick look on the internet and I saw one for sale for 160,000 euros. These are the Rolls-Royce of pianos. They're grand pianos, they're big pianos, pianos to fill an entire music hall, and exquisitely crafted. They really are the best pianos. Keith will only play on this. Vera has no idea what she's agreeing to, but says, sure, I'll make sure that you have that piano. Well, the date of the concert arrives, and for Vera's jazz concert, she's been given a slot in the late evening after a classical music concert. That concert is now finishing. Keith arrives and he's taken to the rehearsal room. We're now a few hours away from the start of his performance. And he's shown the Bösendorfer 290 Imperial. And guess what? It isn't the piano that Keith wanted. It is a Bösendorfer, but it's just not the Imperial 290. This is actually a rehearsal piano, one of those pianos that goes against the wall, not a grand piano. Definitely not the kind of piano you want for an important concert. Keith frowns, sits down at this piano and starts to play. And the situation goes from bad to worse in seconds. Not only is this the wrong piano, it's out of tune. Not only is it out of tune, some of the keys don't even work. This is absolutely unacceptable. There is no way Keith Jarrett, a perfectionist, one of the best jazz pianists of all time, is going to perform with this piano. So now, just a few hours away, everyone is scrambling trying to get the right piano for him, and it's impossible. There just aren't that many of these pianos around, and with just a few hours to go, there's no way they can get the right piano in time. Vera is seeing her dream go up in smoke. People are now starting to arrive for this very first jazz concert. But Keith shrugs his shoulders and says, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do." Picks up his bag and his coat, he leaves the auditorium, walks down the street and flags down a taxi. He's leaving. But Vera is not someone to give up easily. She runs out after him, and as Keith gets into the taxi, she taps on the window. He lowers the window and she begs him, "Please, please come in and play." Keith thinks about it. And I did say that Vera was quite persuasive. Somehow she manages to convince him to come in and play. Although, the truth be known, it wasn't just her persuasive powers that managed to convince him. You see, Keith knew that this concert was going to be recorded. And Keith figured that this recording was going to be so bad that it would serve as a perfect lesson for all the other music organizers in the future. If you don't get me the right piano, he thought, this is how bad your concert will be. So Keith goes in. The auditorium is now full. His tiny piano is on the stage. He sits at the piano and he begins to play. And what happens? Well, within seconds, it's immediate to all of those who were fortunate enough to be there that this is not going to be an ordinary night. This is no ordinary concert. There's something about that piano that forces Keith into a period of extreme creativity and improvisation such that even he was unable to replicate in the future. That recording, which luckily exists, went on to become the greatest selling jazz piano concert of all time. The way that Keith was forced to play, the difficulties that he had with a piano with some keys that didn't even work, led to the most creative, inspirational concert perhaps of all time. So the next time the going gets tough, just think, maybe this is the time to shine.